The wind howled like a dying animal outside Nathan Turner's cabin, and when the pounding started on his door that bitter February evening in 1873, he thought at first it was just another branch torn loose by the storm. Then he heard it again, weaker this time, and distinctly human. He crossed the rough wooden floor in 3 long strides, unlatching the door against the force of the wind that nearly ripped it from his hands. Snow and freezing air blasted into the warm interior, and there on his threshold, barely visible through the white fury of the blizzard, stood a woman collapsed against the doorframe. Nathan did not hesitate. He pulled her inside, her weight surprisingly light in his arms despite the layers of frozen clothing. Ice crystals had formed on her eyelashes and in the dark hair that escaped from beneath her wool hat. Her lips had taken on a bluish tint that made his chest tighten with worry. He kicked the door shut behind them and carried her to the chair nearest the fire. "Can you hear me?" he asked, his voice rougher than intended. His hands moved quickly, unfastening the frozen clasps of her coat. "Miss, can you hear me?" She made a small sound, something between a whimper and a sigh. Her eyelids fluttered but did not open. Nathan worked faster, peeling away the wet outer layers and wrapping her in the thick wool blanket he kept draped over the back of his reading chair. The fire blazed hot, fueled by logs he had stoked not an hour before, but she shook so violently he could hear her teeth chattering. He grabbed another blanket from his bed in the corner and tucked it around her, then went to heat water on the stove. His cabin was not large. Just one main room with a sleeping area separated by a half wall, but it was sturdy and well built. He had constructed it himself when he first came to Kansas 5 years ago, settling on the outskirts of Leavenworth where the land stretched wide and the prairie met the sky in an endless horizon. The kettle began to steam. Nathan found his tin cup and dropped in some of the precious tea leaves his sister had sent him last Christmas. As he poured the hot water, he glanced back at his unexpected guest. She had stopped shaking quite so violently, which he took as a good sign. Her face, now that the worst of the ice had melted away, showed delicate features with high cheekbones and a straight nose. She could not have been more than 22 or 23 years old. "Here," he said, kneeling beside the chair. "You need to drink this." Her eyes opened, and he found himself looking into irises the color of spring leaves, bright green even in the dim firelight. They focused on him with effort, confusion clouding them. "Where am I?" Her voice came out as barely more than a whisper. "My cabin." "About 5 miles southwest of Leavenworth. That blizzard outside brought you to my door." He held the cup to her lips. "Drink, slowly." She obeyed, taking small sips. Her hands emerged from the blankets, pale and trembling, to hold the cup herself. He noticed her fingers, long and elegant despite their current state. No wedding ring. That observation came unbidden and he pushed it aside, focusing instead on making sure she did not spill the hot liquid on herself. "Thank you," she managed after she had drunk half the cup. "I thought I was going to die out there. You might have if you had not found this place." Nathan sat back on his heels. "What were you doing out in weather like this? That storm came up fast, but there were signs all day it was coming." Her eyes filled with tears and she looked away from him into the fire. "I had to leave. I could not stay in town another moment." Nathan waited. He was not a man given to prying into others' business, but he needed to understand the situation. A woman alone in a blizzard spoke of desperation, and desperation often meant danger following close behind. "My name is Fiona Norton," she said finally. "I was working as a seamstress in Leavenworth, living in a boarding house on 3rd Street. The owner, Mrs. Carmichael, she has a son." Fiona's voice hardened. "Thomas Carmichael decided he wanted more from me than just the rent money. When I refused him today, he said he would throw me out into the street. Mrs. Carmichael took her son's side, called me all manner of terrible names. So I left before he could make good on any of his other threats. Nathan's jaw tightened. He knew the Carmichaels, knew Thomas by reputation as a man who drank too much and had wandering hands. The thought of him threatening this woman made anger simmer in his gut. "You did right to leave," he said, "though heading out into that storm nearly cost you your life. I did not know where else to go. I have no family in Kansas, no friends close enough to impose upon. I just started walking, thinking maybe I could reach the next town over, but the snow got so thick I could not see 5 feet ahead." She met his eyes again. "I saw the light from your window like a beacon. I thought it might be a dream, something my freezing mind had conjured up. But I made myself keep walking toward it. I am glad you did." The words came out more earnest than he intended. Nathan cleared his throat and stood. "You can stay here tonight. The storm will not let up until morning at the earliest. I will take the floor." "I cannot ask you to do that," Fiona protested, attempting to rise from the chair. Her legs gave out immediately and Nathan caught her before she could fall. "You are not asking. I am telling you." His hand steadied her, and he was acutely aware of how small she felt, how fragile. "Your body has been through an ordeal. You need rest and warmth." She did not argue further. He helped her to his bed, which suddenly seemed inadequate with its simple cornhusk mattress and worn quilts. But Fiona sank onto it with a sigh of relief, her eyes already closing with exhaustion. Nathan banked the fire to keep it burning through the night and spread his bedroll on the floor near the stove. Sleep did not come easily. He lay awake listening to the wind shriek around the cabin walls and the soft sound of Fiona's breathing from across the room. His mind churned with questions and concerns. Come morning, he would have to figure out what to do, how to help her. But for now, she was safe and warm, and that would have to be enough. The storm raged for 3 days. On that first morning, Nathan woke to find pale sunlight filtering through the cabin's single window, though the wind still howled and snow continued to fall in thick sheets. He rose quietly, mindful of his guest, and set about making breakfast. Fiona emerged from the sleeping area as he was frying salt pork and cornmeal mush. She had removed her outer dress and wore just her simple cotton shift and wool stockings. Her hair hung loose down her back in waves of deep chestnut brown. In the morning light, he could see the exhaustion still etched in her face, dark circles under those remarkable green eyes. "Good morning," she said, her voice still rough. "I hope I did not take your only bed. It is no matter. How are you feeling?" "Sore, cold still, deep in my bones. But alive, thanks to you." She came closer to the stove, holding her hands out to its warmth. "I am sorry to be such an imposition." "You are not an imposition. The storm has not let up. You could not leave even if you wanted to." Nathan slid the food onto 2 tin plates. "We might be stuck here together for a while." They ate in companionable silence. Nathan found himself stealing glances at her, noting the way she ate with neat, precise movements despite her obvious hunger. Everything about her spoke of refinement, of a life that had perhaps known better circumstances before landing her in a Leavenworth boarding house. "Were you born in Kansas?" he asked when they had finished eating. Fiona shook her head. "Ohio, Columbus. My father was a teacher, my mother took in sewing. They both died of fever 3 years ago within a week of each other. I had no siblings, no other family willing to take me in, so I came west, thinking I might find work and perhaps a fresh start. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you." She looked down at her hands. "What about you? Have you always been in Kansas?" "No, I am from Pennsylvania originally. My father had a farm there, but after the war things were difficult. The land was tired, and there were too many of us trying to make a living from it. I came west in '68, worked as a ranch hand for a few years, saved my money. Bought this land 3 years back and built this cabin with my own hands. You fought in the war, Nathan nodded, not elaborating. Those years were not something he spoke of often. The things he had seen, the things he had done in the name of the Union, they haunted his dreams sometimes. But the war was over, had been for 8 years now, and he tried to keep his mind on building a future rather than dwelling on the past. You built this place yourself. That is impressive. Fiona looked around the cabin with new appreciation. It is a good, solid structure. You have skill. I learned from my father. He might not have been able to make the farm prosper, but he taught me how to work with my hands, how to build things that last. They spent the rest of that first day simply surviving the storm. Nathan showed Fiona where he kept his supplies, apologizing for the sparse selection. Beans and cornmeal, salt pork and a few precious cans of vegetables, flour and lard for biscuits. It was provisions for one person living alone, not for entertaining guests. But she did not complain, instead insisting on helping him prepare the midday meal. As she worked beside him in the small space, Nathan became aware of her in ways that made him uncomfortable. The scent of her hair, something floral despite days without proper washing. The brush of her arm against his when they both reached for the same pot. The sound of her humming softly under her breath as she kneaded dough for biscuits. He was 27 years old and had not been with a woman in more than 2 years, not since Catherine Miller had turned down his marriage proposal and wed the banker's son instead. Since then, Nathan had thrown himself into his work, into building his homestead and dreaming of the ranch he would eventually run. He had convinced himself he did not need companionship, that he was content with his solitary life. But having Fiona in his space, her presence filling corners that had been empty for so long, awakened longings he had tried to bury. That night, as they sat before the fire after supper, Fiona spoke more of her life in Ohio, of her parents and the childhood she remembered with obvious fondness. Nathan found himself sharing stories in return, tales of Pennsylvania and his large family, the siblings he had not seen in years but still wrote to when he could. "You miss them?" Fiona asked. "Every day. But they have their lives there and I have mine here. Maybe someday I will go back for a visit or they will come west. But for now, letters have to be enough. It must be lonely sometimes, living out here by yourself." Nathan considered that. Sometimes, but I knew what I was choosing when I built this place. The land, the freedom, the ability to make my own way without depending on anyone else. That seemed worth the loneliness. Seemed? He looked at her, at the firelight dancing in her eyes, and felt something shift in his chest. "Seemed," he repeated quietly. The second day of the storm, they woke to find snow piled high against the cabin door. Nathan had to push hard to open it, even a crack, and the wall of white that greeted him made it clear they were well and truly snowed in. He managed to dig out enough space to reach the small barn where he kept his horse, a sturdy roan mare named Patience. The animal nickered in greeting, and he fed her from the hay stored in the loft, checking to make sure she had enough water. When he returned to the cabin, stamping snow from his boots, he found Fiona had tidied the space and was mending a tear in his spare shirt with needle and thread from her bag. "You do not have to do that," he said. "I want to. You have given me shelter and food. The least I can do is make myself useful." She bit off the thread and held up the shirt for inspection. "Besides, I am a seamstress by trade. This is what I know." Nathan took the shirt, examining her work. The stitches were tiny and precise, nearly invisible. "This is fine work. Thank you. My mother taught me. She was the best seamstress in Columbus. People would come from all over to have her make their Sunday dresses and wedding gowns. Pride and sadness mingled in Fiona's voice. I am not quite as skilled as she was, but I try to honor what she taught me. They fell into an easy rhythm that day. Nathan worked on repairing a broken chair leg while Fiona went through his meager collection of clothing, mending tears and replacing missing buttons. They talked as they worked, sharing more stories, learning about each other in the way that happens when two people are thrown together by circumstance. He learned that she loved reading, but had left most of her books behind in her hasty departure from the boarding house. That she had once had a sweetheart in Ohio, a young man named Peter who had died at Gettysburg. That she dreamed of one day having a dress shop of her own, a place where she could create beautiful things with her hands. She learned that he had taught himself to read using his mother's Bible and whatever newspapers he could get his hands on. That he hoped to expand his small homestead into a proper cattle ranch within the next 5 years. That he had once wanted to be a teacher like his grandfather, but the war had changed the direction of his life. "Do you regret it?" Fiona asked. "Not becoming a teacher." Nathan thought about that. "No. I think we become who we are meant to be, even if the path there is not what we expected. I am a better man for the work I do with my hands. Teaching would have been satisfying in its own way, but building something from nothing, making the land productive, that fulfills me in a way I do not think teaching ever would have. I understand that. Creating something with your own effort, seeing the tangible results of your labor. There is a deep satisfaction in it." "Exactly." The wind howled louder as afternoon faded into evening. Nathan went outside twice more to check on patients and to bring in more firewood from the covered stack against the cabin's south wall. Each time, the cold bit through his coat and gloves within minutes, making him grateful for the warm shelter waiting inside. That night, as they prepared for bed, Fiona insisted that Nathan take his own bed back. "You cannot sleep on the floor another night. I have recovered enough. We can share the bed. We are both adults and these are unusual circumstances." Nathan felt his face heat. That would not be proper. "Proper?" Fiona laughed, though not unkindly. "Nathan, I showed up at your door half frozen. You have shared your home and your food with me. We have spent 2 days together without a chaperone. I think propriety sailed out the window when the blizzard began." She had a point, but still he hesitated. The thought of lying beside her, separated only by quilts and whatever distance they could maintain in the narrow bed, sent his heart racing. "I will stay on my side," she said softly. "I promise. But it is foolish for you to sleep on the floor when there is space enough for two." In the end, he agreed. They lay down back to back, a careful 6 inches of space between them. Nathan stared at the cabin wall, acutely aware of every small movement she made, every breath she took. Sleep seemed impossible. But eventually, lulled by the warmth and the exhaustion of the past days, he drifted off. He woke sometime in the deep night to find that space between them had disappeared. Fiona had rolled toward him in her sleep, and her body curved against his back, one arm draped over his side. He held very still, afraid to wake her, afraid to break whatever spell allowed this closeness. Her breath warmed the back of his neck. His heart hammered so hard he was sure she must be able to feel it. This was dangerous. He knew it with every fiber of his being, but he could not bring himself to move away. Instead, he let himself savor the feeling of not being alone, of having someone close, of the comfort that came from human contact after so long without it. When he woke in the morning, she had already risen and was rekindling the fire. She did not mention their nighttime closeness, and neither did he. But something had changed between them, an invisible barrier breached. The third day of the storm broke clear and cold. Nathan woke to brilliant sunshine streaming through the window, and the absence of wind. He rose carefully, mindful of Fiona still sleeping beside him. They had shared the bed for a second night, and again they had gravitated toward each other in sleep. He had woken twice during the night to find himself holding her, her head tucked beneath his chin, their legs tangled together. Each time he had gently extracted himself, putting space between them. But each time they had drifted back together as if drawn by some invisible force. He stepped outside into a world transformed. Snow lay in deep drifts that smoothed and softened the harsh prairie landscape. The sky stretched overhead in a dome of impossible blue. The air was still brutally cold, but without the wind, it felt almost pleasant. He drew in a deep breath, feeling it burn in his lungs. The drifts would make travel difficult for a few days, but the storm had passed. Soon, Fiona would be able to leave, to return to town, or move on to wherever she had been heading when the blizzard caught her. The thought created an unexpected hollow feeling in his chest. He was shoveling a path to the barn when she emerged from the cabin, wrapped in her coat and his spare scarf. "It is beautiful," she said, shading her eyes against the glare of sun on snow. "Beautiful and treacherous. That snow is deep enough to swallow a man in places. How long before the roads are passable? A few days, maybe, if no more storms come through." He leaned on the shovel. "When they are clear, I can take you back to Leavenworth if you want, or to Fort Leavenworth or one of the towns east of here." Fiona was quiet for a long moment. "What if I do not want to go back to Leavenworth?" "Then you do not have to. But you will need to go somewhere. You cannot stay here." "Why not?" The question hung between them. Nathan felt his heart begin to pound again, that same racing sensation he had experienced lying beside her in the dark. "Because people would talk. Because it is not proper for you to live here with me, unmarried and unchaperoned." "And if we were married?" The shovel fell from his hands. He stared at her, certain he had misheard. "What?" Fiona's cheeks were pink from more than just the cold. "I am sorry, that was too bold. Forget I said anything." She turned to go back inside, but Nathan caught her arm. "Wait." "What are you saying?" "I am saying that these past 3 days have been the happiest I have been since before my parents died. I am saying that I feel safe here with you, that I like the person I am when we are together. I am saying that the thought of leaving, of going back to town and finding another boarding house and another position as a seamstress, fills me with dread." She looked up at him, her green eyes bright with unshed tears. "I know it is too soon. I know we barely know each other. But I also know that I have never felt about anyone the way I am starting to feel about you." Nathan's throat felt tight. "Fiona, I am just a homesteader trying to build a ranch. I do not have much to offer. This cabin is rough, the work is hard. You deserve better than this. Better than a good man who saved my life. Better than someone who treats me with respect and kindness. Better than a place where I feel I could belong." She shook her head. "You do not understand, Nathan. I have had better in terms of material comfort. My father's house had proper floors and real glass in the windows and enough food to never go hungry. But since I lost my parents, I have been adrift. No home, no real purpose beyond surviving one day to the next. Here, with you, I feel anchored again." He wanted to tell her it was too fast, that they needed more time. But looking into her eyes, feeling the absolute rightness of having her close, he could not make himself say those sensible words. "I have not courted you," he said instead. "I have not brought you flowers or taken you on buggy rides. I have not done any of the things a man is supposed to do. We have been snowed in during a blizzard. I think we can be forgiven for skipping some of the traditional steps." A laugh escaped him, surprising them both. "You are something else, Fiona Norton." "Is that a yes?" Nathan cupped her face in his work-rough hands. Her skin felt like silk cold from the winter air. "If you are truly asking what I think you are asking, then yes." Yes, I would be honored if you would stay. If you would marry me and make this place our home instead of just mine." Her smile was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. "I am asking. And yes, Nathan Turner, I will marry you." He kissed her then, there in the snow with the winter sun shining down on them. Her lips were cold at first but warmed quickly. She tasted of the coffee they had shared at breakfast, of hope and new beginnings. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "Are we being foolish?" he asked quietly. "Maybe. Probably. But I have been sensible my whole life, and where has it gotten me? I think it is time to take a chance on something that feels right, even if it does not make perfect sense." They spent the rest of that day in a haze of happiness, making plans while finishing the necessary chores. Nathan would take her into Leavenworth as soon as the roads were clear. They would marry at the church there, with whatever witnesses they could find. She would collect her belongings from the boarding house, probably enduring whatever gossip and scandal Thomas Carmichael had spread in her absence. Then they would return here to the cabin to start building their life together. "I should warn you," Nathan said as they sat before the fire that evening, "I am not an easy man to live with. I get absorbed in my work and forget to eat sometimes. I am up before dawn every day, even in winter. I have strong opinions about how things should be done, and I snore." Fiona laughed. "I have been sleeping beside you for 2 nights. I already know about the snoring. As for the rest, I am not the easiest woman either. I am particular about how the house is kept. I will want to continue my sewing, not just mending but creating new things. I sing while I work, sometimes badly, and I have been known to have strong opinions of my own. Then we will figure it out together, both of us stubborn and opinionated. I cannot wait." That night, they lay together without the careful distance of before. Fiona rested her head on Nathan's chest, listening to his heartbeat. His arm wrapped around her, holding her close. It was innocent still, nothing improper happening before the wedding. But the intimacy of it, the trust and tenderness, felt more profound than anything merely physical could have been. "Nathan," Fiona's voice was soft in the darkness. "Yes, thank you for opening your door, for not turning me away. I could never have turned you away. The moment I saw you there, something in me knew I was supposed to help you, that you were supposed to be here. You believe in fate," he considered that. "I believe in God's providence. I believe things happen for reasons we may not always understand in the moment. That blizzard could have killed you. Instead, it brought you to safety, to me. That does not feel like coincidence." "No," she agreed. "It feels like something more." 4 days after the storm, the main road to Leavenworth was passable. Nathan hitched Patience to his small wagon, helped Fiona up onto the seat beside him, and they set out early in the morning. The journey took twice as long as usual, the horse moving carefully through areas where snow still lay deep. But the weather held clear and cold, and by mid-afternoon they were driving down the main street of Leavenworth. The town had grown considerably since Kansas had become a state 13 years earlier. What had started as a frontier outpost now boasted proper streets, numerous businesses, and a population that swelled during the shipping season when the Missouri River traffic was at its peak. Even in the dead of winter, it bustled with activity. Nathan guided the wagon to the church at the end of Main Street. The building was simple but well-maintained, its white paint bright against the winter landscape. Reverend James Taylor answered their knock, a tall man in his 50s with kind eyes and a welcoming smile. "Nathan Turner, it has been months since I have seen you at services. What brings you to town?" "A wedding, Reverend. Mine, if you are willing to perform the ceremony." The Reverend's eyebrows rose as he looked from Nathan to Fiona and back again. "Well now, that is wonderful news." Come in out of the cold." They followed him into the church's small office. Once they were settled, Reverend Taylor looked at them expectantly. "Tell me how you two met." Nathan let Fiona tell most of the story, only adding details when necessary. The Reverend listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. "These are unusual circumstances," he said when she finished. "But I cannot deny that you both seem certain of your feelings. However, I would ask that you wait at least a few days before marrying. Take time to be sure this is what you both truly want, not just a response to the dramatic situation." "With respect, Reverend," Fiona said, "I am quite sure. I know my own mind. I know that I want to spend my life with Nathan." "And I know I want to spend mine with Fiona," Nathan added. "But we will respect your counsel. We can wait a few days." They settled on a wedding 5 days hence, on Sunday after the morning service. That would give them time to arrange for witnesses and for Fiona to retrieve her belongings. It would also, though the Reverend did not say so explicitly, give them both a chance to change their minds if they were having second thoughts. After leaving the church, Nathan drove to the boarding house where Fiona had been living. She climbed down from the wagon with visible reluctance. "Would you like me to come with you?" Nathan asked. "No, I need to do this myself, but stay close." He watched her walk up the steps and disappear inside, waited in tense silence, ready to intervene if Thomas Carmichael decided to make trouble. But 15 minutes later, Fiona emerged carrying a worn carpetbag and a bundle wrapped in cloth. Her face was pale but composed. "That is everything?" Nathan asked as he helped her back onto the wagon. "Everything important, Mrs. Carmichael kept my deposit, claimed I owed her for the inconvenience of my sudden departure. I did not argue. I just wanted to be out of there." "Did he bother you?" "Thomas." "He was not there, thank God. His mother said plenty of unpleasant things, but I survived." Fiona settled the bag at her feet. "Can we leave now? I do not want to spend another moment in this town." Nathan was happy to oblige. But as they were preparing to depart, a woman's voice called out, "Fiona, Fiona Norton, is that really you?" They both turned to see a young woman hurrying toward them. She was perhaps a few years younger than Fiona, with blonde hair and a worried expression. "Alice." Fiona's face brightened. "Alice Cooper, what are you doing here?" "I live here. I work at the general store." Alice reached the wagon, slightly breathless. "I heard you had run off during the storm. I was so worried. Are you all right?" "I am fine. Better than fine." Fiona gestured to Nathan. "Alice, this is Nathan Turner. Nathan, this is Alice Cooper. We knew each other back in Ohio before I came west." Nathan touched the brim of his hat in greeting. Alice studied him with frank curiosity. "It is good to meet you, Mr. Turner. Are you the reason Fiona disappeared?" In a manner of speaking. "She ended up at my cabin during the blizzard." Understanding dawned in Alice's eyes. Oh my. That must have been quite an experience." "It was," Fiona said. "In fact, we are getting married on Sunday. Would you come?" "Be my witness." Alice's mouth fell open. "Married? Fiona, you have known him less than a week." "I know, it sounds crazy, but it is what I want, what we both want." Alice looked between them, clearly torn between happiness for her friend and concern about the hasty decision. "Are you sure? Truly sure?" "I am. Please say you will come." "Of course I will come. Someone needs to be there to support you, and it seems I am the only friend you have in this town." Alice's expression softened. "I am happy for you, truly. If this is what you want, then I hope you will be very happy together." They parted with promises to see each other on Sunday. As Nathan guided the wagon out of town, Fiona was quiet beside him. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yes. I am just thinking about how strange life is. A week ago I was miserable, trapped in a bad situation with no clear way out. Now I am engaged to be married, starting a completely new life. It does not quite feel real yet." having second thoughts. "No," she said it firmly, without hesitation. "Are you?" "No. Though I keep waiting for someone to tell me I am making a mistake, that a woman like you could never really want a life with a man like me." Fiona slid her hand into his. "Then let me tell you now so you can stop waiting and wondering. I want this. I want you. I want the life we are going to build together." The next 5 days passed in a blur of activity. Nathan took Fiona back to the cabin, which would be their home until he could afford to build something larger. They spent the time preparing, cleaning the cabin from top to bottom, rearranging the limited furniture to make space for her belongings. Fiona unpacked her carpet bag, revealing a few dresses, some precious sewing supplies, and a small wooden box that contained her mother's wedding ring. "I would like you to have this," she said, holding the ring out to Nathan, "if you want to use it for our wedding." The ring was simple gold, worn thin in places from years of wear. Nathan took it carefully, feeling the weight of what it represented. "Are you certain? This belonged to your mother." "Which is exactly why I want you to use it. She would have liked you, Nathan. She would have been happy knowing her ring was on my hand again, representing a new marriage, a new beginning." Sunday arrived cold but clear. Nathan wore his best shirt, the one Fiona had mended, and his only suit jacket. Fiona had spent the previous day altering one of her dresses, adding lace from her collection of sewing supplies. It was not a grand wedding gown, but in the morning light streaming through the cabin window, Nathan thought she looked more beautiful than any woman he had ever seen. They arrived at the church to find Alice waiting with a young man she introduced as her intended, Samuel Wright, who worked at the fort. Reverend Taylor was waiting inside along with his wife Margaret, who had agreed to serve as the other witness. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. Nathan repeated his vows in a voice that shook slightly, overcome by the magnitude of what he was promising. To love and honor Fiona for all the days of his life, to provide for her and protect her, to be faithful and true until death parted them. When it was Fiona's turn, she spoke her vows with clear conviction, her green eyes never leaving his face. Her hand was steady as he slipped her mother's ring onto her finger. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Taylor said with a smile. "Nathan, you may kiss your bride." Nathan cupped Fiona's face in his hands and kissed her gently, aware of their small audience but unable to resist showing her, even in this chaste way, the depth of his feelings. When they pulled apart, her eyes were bright with happy tears. They signed the marriage certificate, Alice and Margaret witnessing their signatures. Alice hugged Fiona tightly. "Write to me," she whispered. "Let me know how you are doing. I will, I promise." "Take care of her," Alice said to Nathan, her expression suddenly fierce. "She has been through so much. She deserves to be happy." "I will do everything in my power to make sure she is," Nathan replied solemnly. The ride back to the cabin felt different now. This was no longer a temporary arrangement, no longer two people thrown together by circumstance trying to figure out what came next. They were married, bound together by law and by God. The cabin was truly their home now. Nathan carried Fiona over the threshold, a tradition he had heard of but never witnessed. She laughed in surprise, her arms wrapping around his neck. "You did not have to do that," she said as he set her down gently. "I wanted to. A new beginning deserves to be marked properly." They spent the rest of that Sunday afternoon simply being together as husband and wife. The work of the homestead could wait for a day. Instead, they sat before the fire, talking and dreaming about the future. Nathan told her his plans for the ranch, where he would expand the barn, how many head of cattle he hoped to run eventually. Fiona spoke of the garden she would plant in the spring, of the improvements they could make to the cabin over time. As evening fell and shadows lengthened across the floor, Nathan took Fiona's hand. "Are you nervous?" he asked softly. "A little." "Are you terrified?" he admitted with a rueful smile. "I keep thinking I will do something wrong, that I will somehow fail to make you happy." Fiona moved closer until she was sitting in his lap, her arms around his neck. "Nathan Turner, you have already made me happier than I have been in years. You saved my life, you offered me a home, you married me. You could not possibly fail me. I will try my best not to." She kissed him then, and the kiss deepened in a way their previous kisses had not. Nathan stood, lifting her with him, and carried her to the bed that was now theirs to share without hesitation or propriety standing between them. The morning brought brilliant sunshine and the reality of their new life together. Nathan woke to find Fiona already up, standing at the window in her nightdress, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Everything. Nothing. How much my life has changed in such a short time." She leaned back against him. "I am happy, Nathan, truly happy." "Good, so am I." They fell into a routine over the following weeks. Nathan rose early to tend to the animals and see to the outdoor work. Fiona took charge of the cabin, cooking their meals and keeping things organized. She also set up a small sewing corner near the window where the light was best, working on projects to pass the long winter hours. She made new curtains for the window, mended all of Nathan's worn clothing, and began work on a quilt using scraps of fabric from her collection. In the evenings, they sat together before the fire. Sometimes Nathan would read aloud from the Bible or from the few books he owned. Other times, Fiona would tell him stories from her childhood or sing the songs her mother had taught her. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's rhythms and habits, growing comfortable in their shared space. But it was not all easy. They had their first real argument 3 weeks after the wedding. Nathan had gone into town for supplies without asking if Fiona needed anything, and she had been furious when he returned without the thread she had specifically mentioned needing earlier that week. "I told you I was running low," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "Were you not listening?" "I was listening, but I forgot. I am sorry." "You forgot. Just like you forgot to mention you were going to town in the first place. I would have liked to come with you to see Alice, but you just left without saying anything." Nathan felt his own temper rising. "I did not think I needed permission to go to town. I have been making these trips alone for 5 years. I am not asking for permission. I am asking to be included in the decisions that affect both of us. This is my home too now, Nathan." Her words struck him like a physical blow. She was right. He had fallen back into his old patterns of independence, making decisions without consulting her. It was not intentional, but that did not make it acceptable. "You are absolutely right," he said quietly. "I am sorry, Fiona. I should have asked if you wanted to come. I should have checked with you about what you needed. I am still learning how to be married, how to think in terms of we instead of just I." Her anger deflated at his apology. "I am sorry too. I should not have snapped at you. I am also still learning. My parents had such a good marriage, but I am realizing that watching a marriage and being in one are very different things." They made up, holding each other close, promising to do better. And they did. Nathan made a conscious effort to include Fiona in his plans, to ask her opinion on decisions about the homestead. Fiona tried to be more patient, to understand that Nathan's years of solitary living had created habits that would take time to break. Winter began to loosen its grip as February gave way to March. The days grew longer, the sun warmer. Snow melted, revealing the brown grass beneath. Nathan began making plans for spring planting, for the work that would need to be done to prepare for bringing in cattle. Fiona spent more time outside, walking the perimeter of their property, getting to know the land. She chose a spot for her garden, south-facing and protected from the worst winds. Nathan helped her mark it out and promised to till the soil once it thawed enough. One evening in mid-March, as they were finishing supper, Fiona said, "I have something to tell you." Nathan looked up from his plate, catching something in her tone. "What is it?" "I am with child. I am almost certain." Joy flooded through him, so intense it took his breath away. "Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be. I have missed my monthly courses twice now, and I have been feeling sick in the mornings. I remember my mother talking about the signs when her friends were expecting." Nathan stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "That is wonderful news, the best news." "You are happy?" she asked, her voice muffled against his chest. "Happy does not begin to cover it. A child, Fiona, our child." She pulled back to look up at him, her eyes shining. "I was worried it might be too soon. We have only been married 2 months. It is perfect timing. The baby will come in the fall, after the busy summer work is done." He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "We are going to be parents. We are." The knowledge of the baby changed everything and nothing. They still had the same daily tasks, the same challenges of homesteading life. But now everything they did was colored by the awareness of the future growing inside Fiona. Nathan found himself planning farther ahead than he ever had before. The cabin would need to be expanded before winter. They would need to build a proper cradle. He would need to put away extra money for when the baby came. Fiona took the pregnancy in stride, continuing her work even as the morning sickness sometimes made her miserable. Nathan learned to make her ginger tea, something his mother had sworn by during her numerous pregnancies. He took over more of the heavy work, insisting she rest when she looked tired. April brought warmer weather and the beginning of planting season. Nathan broke ground for the garden, turning the rich soil under. Fiona planted seeds she had purchased on one of their trips to town: beans and peas, squash and pumpkins, carrots and turnips. She tended her garden carefully, checking it every day for signs of growth. The first green shoots appeared in mid-April, tiny but vigorous. Fiona was delighted, showing Nathan each new sprout as if it were a miracle. To her, perhaps it was. She had helped her mother in their garden in Ohio, but this was the first garden that was truly hers, planted in her own soil. Nathan made good on his promise to bring in cattle. He traveled east with several other local ranchers, buying a small herd of 30 head from a farm that was selling out. Getting them back to his property was an adventure that took a full week, driving the cattle across open country, camping under the stars at night. But when he finally got them safely into his newly repaired corral, the satisfaction was immense. His dream of a ranch was beginning to take real shape. Fiona was 5 months along by the time summer fully arrived. Her belly had rounded noticeably, and Nathan found himself constantly amazed by the physical evidence of the life they had created. He would lie with his hand on her stomach in the evenings, feeling the baby kick and roll. "You hope for a boy or a girl?" Fiona asked one night. "I do not care as long as you both come through the birth safely." "But if you could choose," Nathan considered that. "A boy would be helpful, someone to teach the ranch work to eventually. But a girl would be wonderful too, a daughter with your green eyes and your clever mind." "I think it is a boy," Fiona said. "I do not know why, but I just have a feeling." She was proven right when, on a warm October evening, Fiona gave birth to a healthy baby boy after 12 hours of hard labor. Nathan had ridden to fetch the midwife, Mrs. Patterson, that morning when Fiona's pains began. He had then been essentially useless, pacing outside while the midwife and her assistant worked inside. The sounds of Fiona's pain had nearly driven him mad with worry and helplessness. But then the baby's cry had cut through everything else, strong and indignant, and Mrs. Patterson had opened the door with a smile. "You have a son, Mr. Turner, a big, healthy boy, and your wife did wonderfully." Nathan had rushed inside to find Fiona propped up in their bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a red-faced, squalling infant wrapped in one of the blankets she had made. "Look at him," she said, her voice full of wonder. "Look at what we made." Nathan knelt beside the bed, looking down at his son. The baby had stopped crying and was looking around with unfocused blue eyes, his tiny mouth making sucking motions. "He is perfect," Nathan said, his voice breaking on the words. "You are perfect. Thank you, Fiona. Thank me. I think we had equal parts in this." He laughed, giddy with relief and joy and love so overwhelming he felt he might burst with it. What should we name him? They had discussed names but never quite settled on anything. Now, looking at their son, Fiona said, "What about Noah, after your father, Noah Turner?" Nathan tried the name out. I like it. I like it very much. My father would be honored." Little Noah was a good baby as babies went. He nursed well and slept in reasonably predictable stretches. Fiona recovered from the birth quickly, her youth and general good health serving her well. Within a week, she was back to managing the household, though Nathan insisted on doing more than his share so she could rest when the baby slept. The cabin felt both more crowded and more complete with Noah in it. His small noises, the snuffling and cooing, the cries when he was hungry or needed changing, filled spaces that had been silent before. Nathan found himself captivated by his son, studying every tiny feature, marveling at the miniature fingernails and the way Noah's hand would grip his finger with surprising strength. Winter came again, their second as a married couple. This year, they faced it as a family. Nathan had expanded the cabin during the summer, adding a second room that served as a proper bedroom, moving the sleeping area away from the main living space. It gave them more privacy and provided a separate space for Noah's cradle. The first anniversary of the blizzard that had brought Fiona to his door fell in February. Nathan marked the occasion by giving Fiona a gift he had been working on in secret during his spare moments in the barn. A beautiful wooden sewing box with compartments for thread and needles and scissors. He had carved a simple pattern of prairie flowers on the lid. "Nathan, it is beautiful," Fiona said, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "You made this. I wanted to give you something special, to mark the day we met. The day the blizzard tried to kill me and you saved my life instead. The day I got the greatest gift I could have asked for, even though I did not know it at the time." Fiona kissed him. "Thank you, I love it, and I love you. I love you too, more than I ever thought possible to love another person." Noah began walking the following spring, taking his first wobbly steps across the cabin floor to Fiona's delight and Nathan's poorly concealed terror. Their son was fearless, constantly getting into things he should not, exploring every corner of the cabin and the yard. Keeping him safe became a full-time job, but he was also a joy. His first words were "Mama" and "Pa," and the sound of him calling for them never got old. He laughed easily and often, finding delight in simple things. A butterfly, Patience the horse snuffling his hair, the chickens Fiona had talked Nathan into getting. The ranch continued to grow. Nathan brought in more cattle each year, slowly building his herd. The garden expanded too, Fiona learning through trial and error what grew best in Kansas soil. She began selling her excess vegetables in town, earning a small income of her own that she saved carefully. When Noah was 3 years old, Fiona became pregnant again. This time, she knew the signs immediately. The pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because she knew what to expect, or perhaps because chasing after an active 3-year-old kept her too busy to dwell on discomforts. Their daughter was born on a beautiful May morning in 1878, arriving so quickly there was barely time to fetch the midwife. She had Fiona's green eyes and a full head of dark hair. They named her Lily, after Nathan's mother. Noah was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to help with her care. He would bring her things, toys and blankets, patting her gently and telling her stories in his 3-year-old way. Watching him with Lily made Nathan's heart swell with pride and love. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The seasons turned, bringing their familiar cycles of work and rest. The ranch prospered slowly but steadily. Nathan hired help occasionally during the busy seasons, local men looking for work. The cabin was expanded again to accommodate their growing family. Fiona's sewing business grew beyond just selling vegetables. Women began commissioning her to make dresses and shirts, and her reputation for fine work spread. But it was not just about the work or the ranch or the money they were slowly accumulating. It was about the life they were building together, the partnership they had forged. They still had their disagreements, moments of frustration and misunderstanding. But they had learned how to work through those moments, how to communicate, how to remember that they were on the same side. In the evenings, after the children were in bed, Nathan and Fiona would sit together on the porch he had built that spring, looking out at the land they were shaping with their own hands. "Did you ever imagine this?" Fiona asked one such evening, her hand in his. "When I showed up at your door during that blizzard, did you imagine we would end up here?" "No," Nathan admitted. "I did not imagine anything beyond getting you safely through the storm, but I am grateful every day that the blizzard sent you to my door. I am grateful you opened it, that you let me in every way that matters. I could not have done anything else. You were meant to be here, Fiona, meant to be with me. I believe that with everything I am. So do I." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the prairie, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Inside the cabin, they could hear Noah singing softly to Lily, some made-up song about horses and stars. "We should have more," Fiona said suddenly. Nathan looked at her in surprise. "More what, children?" "I would like at least 1 or 2 more. I do not want Noah and Lily to be alone. I want them to have siblings, to have that support and love." "Are you sure? Pregnancy is not easy, and caring for the ones we have already keeps us both busy." "I am sure. When I think about our future, I see a full house, lots of children and noise and life. What do you think?" Nathan pulled her close. "I think that sounds perfect. I think everything about our life together is perfect, even the hard parts." True to her word, Fiona gave birth to 3 more children over the next 6 years. Another boy they named Jacob, and twin girls they named Rose and Grace. The cabin had to be expanded yet again, turning into a proper house with multiple bedrooms and a real kitchen. The ranch grew too. Nathan bought more land, expanding his holdings. The small herd of cattle had grown to over 200 head. He hired permanent help, 2 young men who lived in the bunkhouse Nathan built near the barn. What had started as a lonely homesteader's dream had become a thriving ranch. But no matter how busy life got, how much work demanded their attention, Nathan and Fiona always made time for each other. Date nights where they would leave the children with one of the hands and ride out to a favorite spot overlooking the creek. Quiet mornings before the children woke, sharing coffee and conversation. Stolen kisses in the barn, playful teasing while doing chores together. "You still make my heart race," Nathan told her one evening when she was 40 and he was 45. After all these years, all these children, all the daily routine of life, You still make me feel the way I felt that first night you slept in my bed." "Good," Fiona said with a smile. "I would hate to think I had lost my touch." Noah grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's quick mind. He loved the ranch, loved working with the cattle and the horses. Nathan began teaching him the business side of things, preparing him to one day take over if he wanted to. Lily was quieter than her boisterous siblings, but she had a way with animals that amazed everyone. She could gentle the most skittish horse, could walk into the chicken coop and have the hens eating from her hand. Nathan often said she had magic in her touch. Jacob was the scholar of the family, always with his nose in a book. Fiona encouraged his love of learning, ordering books from back east, teaching him herself when the local school was too far for daily attendance. Nathan suspected Jacob would not stay on the ranch forever, that his son's dreams would take him somewhere else. That was all right. He wanted his children to find their own paths. The twins, Rose and Grace, were partners in crime from the moment they could walk. Identical in appearance but different in personality, they nonetheless did everything together. Where you found one, the other was never far behind. They adored their older siblings and constantly pestered them to play. 20 years after the blizzard that had brought them together, Nathan and Fiona stood in their bedroom, getting ready for a party the town was throwing in their honor. They had become pillars of the community, respected for their hard work and their generosity. The ranch employed a dozen men now. Fiona's sewing had grown into a real business, with 2 young women working as her apprentices. "Can you believe it has been 20 years?" Fiona asked, studying herself in the mirror. There were lines around her eyes and mouth now, silver threads in her dark hair. But to Nathan, she was as beautiful as the day he first saw her. 20 years, 5 children, and a lifetime of memories, he said, coming to stand behind her, his hands on her shoulders. If I could go back and tell my younger self what was coming, I am not sure he would believe it. Would you change anything? If you could go back? Nathan thought about that seriously. There had been hard times, certainly, droughts that threatened the cattle. A winter so harsh they lost half the herd, Lily's frightening bout with fever when she was 7. The normal struggles and sorrows that came with any life, but there had been so much more joy, so much love, watching his children grow, building something lasting with Fiona, creating a home and a family out of nothing but hope and hard work. "No," he said finally. "I would not change a single thing. Every moment, good and bad, led us here, made us who we are. I am grateful for all of it." Fiona turned in his arms, looking up at him with those green eyes that still had the power to make his breath catch. "I love you, Nathan Turner. Thank you for opening your door that night. Thank you for letting me in. Thank you for knocking. Thank you for being brave enough to fight through that storm, for finding your way to me." They kissed, slow and sweet, a kiss that held 20 years of love and partnership and shared life. "Come on," Fiona said finally. "We should not be late to our own party." The party was held at the church, the whole town turning out to celebrate. There were speeches and toasts, stories shared about the Turner family and their contributions to the community. Alice was there with her husband Samuel and their 4 children. The Reverend, now quite elderly, spoke about the unusual circumstances of Nathan and Fiona's marriage, and how it had become one of the strongest he had ever witnessed. But the best part was when their children surprised them. Noah stood up, clearing his throat nervously. "My siblings and I wanted to do something special for our parents tonight," he said. "To thank them for everything they have given us. For the home they built, the values they taught us, the love they have shown not just to each other but to all of us." Lily stepped forward with a large wrapped package. "We all contributed to this. We hope you like it." Nathan unwrapped it carefully, Fiona looking over his shoulder. Inside was a painting, beautifully rendered in oils. It showed their ranch as it was now. The house and barn and outbuildings, the cattle dotting the hills behind, the garden in full summer glory in front. But in the foreground, rendered in exquisite detail, were two figures, a cowboy and a woman standing close together, the man's arm around the woman's shoulders, both of them looking out at the land before them. "It is us," Fiona breathed. "That day last spring when we stood looking at the new fence line. I remember that exact moment. I hired an artist to come and observe," Noah explained. "Got him to sketch you without you knowing. Then he painted this from the sketches. We wanted to capture what the ranch means, what you have built together." Nathan felt tears stinging his eyes. He was not a man who cried easily, but the thoughtfulness of the gift, the love behind it, overwhelmed him. "It is perfect," he managed. "Thank you, all of you." They hung the painting in the main room of the house, where they could see it every day. It became a focal point, a reminder of how far they had come from that snowy February night when a desperate woman knocked on a lonely cowboy's door. The years continued to pass. Their children grew up and began lives of their own. Noah married a rancher's daughter from the next county over and brought her to live on the ranch, taking over more of the daily operations. Lily married a veterinarian, the first to set up practice in Leavenworth, and they built a house in town. Jacob went east for university, eventually becoming a teacher as Nathan's grandfather had been, though he returned to Kansas to teach at the growing state university. The twins married brothers, much to everyone's amusement, and settled on a farm north of Leavenworth. The family gatherings were loud and chaotic and wonderful, with grandchildren running everywhere and constant noise and laughter. Nathan and Fiona stepped back from the daily work of the ranch, letting Noah and his wife take over. They took up new hobbies, spent more time on the things they loved. Nathan began breeding horses, developing a line known throughout the region for their strength and gentle temperament. Fiona opened a small shop in town, finally achieving her dream of having her own dress shop, though she spent less time sewing now and more time teaching young women the trade. But every February, on the anniversary of the blizzard, they made sure to spend the day together, just the two of them. They would sit before the fire in the house that had grown from a simple cabin, holding hands, remembering. "You remember how scared I was that night?" Fiona asked on their 30th anniversary. "I could barely feel my fingers or toes. I thought I might actually die before I reached your door. I remember opening the door and seeing you there, looking half frozen. My heart nearly stopped. I knew immediately that you were important, that helping you was the most crucial thing I would ever do. You could not have known that. But I did. Some part of me knew. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was God whispering in my ear, but I knew." Fiona shifted closer, resting her head on his shoulder. They were both 60 now, their bodies showing the wear of hard lives well lived, but their love had only deepened with time, growing richer and more complex. "I am glad the blizzard sent me to you," she said. "I am glad you let me in. Not just into your cabin, but into your life, into your heart." "Love found us both that night," Nathan said. "In the middle of the worst storm either of us had ever seen, love found a way." They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling before them, the house quiet around them. Outside, the Kansas wind blew across the prairie, cold but not cruel. Inside, warm and safe, they held each other close. Nathan Turner died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 73, with Fiona beside him as she had been for nearly 46 years. His death, while sad, was not tragic. He had lived a full life, seen his children and grandchildren thrive, built something lasting out of the raw prairie. Fiona grieved him deeply, as was natural after so many years together. But she also took comfort in knowing their love story had been complete, lacking nothing. They had lived and worked and loved together, raised a family, built a legacy. When her time came 5 years later, she went peacefully, surrounded by the children and grandchildren who had been the fruit of that long-ago snowy night. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through generations. The painting of Nathan and Fiona looking out at their land hung in the ranch house for over 100 years, a reminder of where it all began. Their story became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The cowboy who opened his door during a blizzard, the woman who found her way to him through the storm, and the love that found them both, changing two lives and creating a legacy that would endure. In the family cemetery on a hill overlooking the ranch, two graves sit side by side. The headstones are simple, bearing just names and dates and a single inscription that tells their whole story. The blizzard brought her to him. Love kept them together. And every February, when the winter winds blow cold across Kansas, descendants of Nathan and Fiona Turner gather at those graves. They tell the story again, keeping it alive for new generations. They talk about the cabin that became a house, the homestead that became a ranch, the chance meeting that became a lifetime of love. Because some love stories, the really good ones, do not end with death. They live on in the lives they touched, the family they created, the legacy they left behind. Nathan and Fiona's love story was one of those, a tale that would be told as long as there were Turners in Kansas to tell it. And if you listen carefully on cold February nights when the wind howls around the old ranch house, some say you can still feel it. The warmth of the fire Nathan built, the love he and Fiona shared. The beginning of everything that came after, all starting with a blizzard, a desperate knock on a cabin door, and a cowboy who let a stranger in and found his whole life waiting on the other side.